on today's Compassion Radio.
If a young girl runs away because she doesn't want to marry the man her father has picked out for her, it is possible that she will be killed. So there are women and girls who are at significant risk from their own families.
This is Compassion Radio.
Right now, Norm gets to speak to a true hero of ours, speaking to us via Skype from Kabul, Afghanistan. Here's Norm to make introductions.
Our guest today on Compassion Radio is Miss Bronwyn Graham, who is the country director for Afghanistan for Hagar International, a marvelous organization that we know quite well. Bronwyn, thank you so much for being with us today from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Norm. It's great to be with you.
Tell us, just to begin with, what does a country director do there in Afghanistan for Hagar International?
I oversee the programs that we run, and being a fairly small organisation here, I have a lot of hands-on involvement in the projects, but we also raise funds for the projects and deal with all the staff issues and security issues that are here.
Tell us a little bit about, just generally speaking, what it is that you do. What is the target of your work there in the Kabul area?
Hagar Afghanistan wants to help women whose lives have been broken in some way, either via severe domestic violence or trafficking, through a process of rescue and recovery onto rehabilitation and then reintegration, both economic and social.
You're also involved, as I understand it, Bronwyn, in work with children. To what degree does that involve your time right now?
We are setting up a program for both women and girls who can't go home due to the threat of violence. As some of you may know, many girls are married off at a very young age in this country, and so a lot of our clients are actually under 18.
Yeah, we see reports from time to time that it is not unusual, perhaps I can say, that a girl would be married, let's say, at age 12 or 11 or even 10. Is that typical?
It's certainly not uncommon. Certainly before 18 is very common. More than half the population are married, female population are married before they turn 18.
My guess is that perhaps the young women do not have much to say about this. Is that correct?
All the marriages in Afghanistan are arranged marriages, arranged by their families, and most young women don't have any say in who they marry.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, if you can go into a little more detail, about the challenges that women, young women, and women of any age for that matter, face in Afghanistan.
Well, women in Afghanistan have limited freedom. Many of them have limited access to education. So the literacy rates for women in Afghanistan are extremely low, and that's usually a result of both the inability to access schools, but also the cultural norm of not sending girls to school. They also have limited access to healthcare, and this past year Afghanistan was ranked as the most dangerous country on earth for women.
Talk a little bit about that healthcare issue. In our experience in Afghanistan, we've certainly seen that to be true. Has there been any forward movement since, I'll just put it this way, the West has been involved directly in the lives of Afghan women, or have things remained pretty much the same?
There are still a lot of problems, but things have improved. More women are having their births attended by skilled attendants, so traditional midwives or properly trained midwives and doctors. But the further you get away from provincial centres like Kabul, the more rural you are, the less likely you are to have access to good quality healthcare.
Yeah.
So it is definitely still a problem. The government here, with Western funding, has created a basic package of health services which determines how, per head of population, you need to have a basic health clinic and then a comprehensive health clinic and then a provincial hospital and so on. And that has helped somewhat, but there is a long way to go.
You know, I'm very impressed that Hagar International is involved there, and I'm sure that not only is that a result of their resolve to be involved in Afghanistan, which I salute 100%, but also that obviously they found the right person to head up the program there. Now, you're not an American, and that's probably a help in your work in Afghanistan. You're a New Zealander, as I understand.
Yes, that's correct.
What are the kinds of challenges that a Western organization such as yours, and of course you are a faith-based organization, what are some of the challenges that you face in seeking to do the kind of work that you're doing?
To be honest, I don't think we face a lot of challenges that national NGOs doing the same sort of work face. There is a small percentage of the Afghan population who don't want foreigners here, but the vast majority do and are supportive of us being here. I think the challenge for us is the kind of work we do. Women who are not part of families anymore because their families threatened them or didn't look after them are a group of people in this culture that are seen as, are held with a lot of stigma and are held with a lot of suspicion. And so it is more the fact that we work with a very vulnerable group of women and girls that provides challenges rather than specifically the fact we're internationals. And I think, again, there is a group of people in this country who don't want to see people with other faith coming here, but this country in lots of ways is easier than countries like New Zealand, where the vast majority of the population doesn't have any real faith, whereas here you can talk about God fairly openly, you can offer to pray for people fairly openly, because most people have a sense of God being present, even if it is our perceptions of who God is different.
I'm so impressed that you said that, because so much of what we hear in terms of the media, I think, kind of gives a bad rap to Afghanistan, and in particular to the Muslim community generally. I think that we have always found that there is a kind of openness to us, but it depends on how you go about doing your work. Would you agree with that? I mean, with the attitude that you bring to your relationships with people of obviously the majority religion there in Afghanistan?
Yes, I think it makes an enormous difference how you come. If you come out of a sense of being respectful of what they believe and how they want to live their lives, then they also respect you. I do think, it does depend how you come and with what attitude, and whether you want to come and help and whether you want to come and bring friendship goes a long way.
Does it help that you're not an American?
I have an American colleague. Our programming officer is an American. And I think to some people it makes a difference, but to most people we're all foreigners and we get mistaken for Americans all the time, and it doesn't seem to be a problem.
We're talking to Bronwyn Graham, who is the country director for Afghanistan for Hagar International. Bronwyn, we had talked before we went on the air about a project that you are really excited about, and it has potential, but it has not flowered into full bloom as yet, of course. Tell us what you can about that project.
Okay, the project is for women and girls who can't go home due to the threat of violence against them. So in this country, there are still honour killings. If a young girl runs away because she doesn't want to marry the man her father has picked out for her, then it is possible that she will be killed if she doesn't agree to the marriage. So there are women and girls who are at significant risk from their own families. And we want to help these women and girls to find a place in society that is not dependent on their families of origin. So this will involve a process. Many of them have been abused or traumatised in some way, and so it needs to incorporate a period of recovery inside a safe residential facility, and then a period of rehabilitation, learning some skills. As we already talked about, there is a huge lack of education for women and girls in this country, and so some of that will be literacy, basic education, numeracy, and then moving on to vocational skills training, employability skills, and then finding them a supported place where they can work to learn the skills that you need to be able to maintain employment, and then finding them a way of having true social and economic reintegration into society.
Oh, that sounds like a marvelous program. Back a number of years ago, it's been, I guess now 9 years ago, when my wife and I taught English at a university up in Mazar-e Sharif. That was right after the liberation from Taliban rule, and the schools had been reopened, and at the university, they were just bursting at the seams with young women who were so eager to get an education and to move ahead and, in essence, to move into the 21st century and improve their lot in life. We found them to be, and not in a negative way at all, but properly aggressive and ambitious to develop their lives and their potential and to get an education and to do everything that God had equipped them to do. Do you find that kind of spirit among the women and the girls in Afghanistan? Are they eager to expand their horizons and to enter this brave new world of this new century?
I think women in this country vary a lot. I think there's certainly a good proportion of the population who are exactly as you described, extremely keen to make the most of the opportunities that they now have that had previously been denied to them. And we certainly see even older girls going back to school to get an education, entering school at ages that we would think they were kind of missed their education, but they're going back anyway. There's a program run by another organisation that gives the first 3 or 4 years of education to adult women and girls who are in their late teens. And about 25% of those girls go back to school after having completed those first 4 years, and they will enter at grade 5 or 6 level in order to continue their education, which is extremely encouraging. We also see women and girls who have grown up in villages where even the men are not educated. And so for them, the idea of getting an education is extremely foreign. And so most of those women and girls just want to learn to be able to read and write. They're extremely committed to that, but they can't, when they start, they can't see beyond that. To them, that's the goal. And some of them, once they've got that goal, they move on to wanting more education. But for many of them, that is the only goal, is to be able to read and write so that they can communicate in written form.
Is the government responsive to this inner drive on the part of at least some young women, and women of any age for that matter, to improve their lot in life? Would they be supportive of that, or is that an obstacle that you would have to deal with on any regular basis?
There are certainly portions of the government who are extremely supportive of young women getting an education. In particular, I would say the Directorate of Women's Affairs in Kabul. The Directorate herself is extremely cooperative with all of our programs, and they have what they call a women's garden here in Kabul, but it's not just a garden, it is a beautiful place. They have courses for English and computers. They teach women to drive. They teach women how to do basic electronic repairs, cut gemstones, the natural gemstones of Afghanistan, and make jewellery. So there are some really very forward-thinking government officials and government programs.
Yeah.
But I would not say that that is universal.
I would say that certainly, at least in recent years, comparatively speaking, that would be an advance. That would be a step forward over the way things used to be. Of course, way back maybe in the 70s, there was not the kind of obstacles that women face in Afghanistan. But in recent history, it's been a real challenge, but that's encouraging to hear. If we can talk more generally about Afghanistan and about Kabul, as I recall, and maybe this is still true, there's a kind of thinking that says, well, there's Kabul and then there's the rest of Afghanistan. Do you face, though, in Kabul, any kind of security challenges in terms of doing your work? Are you looking over your shoulder much of the time? Can you concentrate on what it is that you want to do and not be overly concerned about the security aspect of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do take security extremely seriously. We live behind walls and have barbed wire on the top of them, but then almost all Afghans live behind walls, so it's not terribly different. We do just, on a day-to-day basis, get on with our work, get on with why we are here. But there are times when the security situation means that we need to cancel meetings or not move about the city as we would like to. So if there are demonstrations going on, then we have to stay clear of those. And to be honest, most of the security incidents in Afghanistan, not just in Kabul, but in the country as a whole, are not directed at development and aid workers. They're directed sometimes at international military, sometimes at local military and police, sometimes at government officials, but very, very rarely at NGO-type activities. So it is more a case of just needing to be aware of what's happening wherever you're working and away from where there might be trouble.
We're talking to Bronwyn Graham, the country director for Afghanistan for Hagar International, and we're talking to her. She is in Kabul, Afghanistan right now. I'd like to get, just for a few moments, real personal here. Tell us, Bronwyn, about the nature of the commitment that you've made. Why would Bronwyn Graham choose to go to Afghanistan and do the kind of work that you are doing? Let us know a little bit about the kind of commitment that takes you to Afghanistan.
Sure, Norm. I first started thinking about this part of the world back in 1994, which is a very long time ago.
Yeah.
And I am a medical doctor by training. And I had become a doctor because I really felt that God would lead me overseas, and I thought that would be a useful skill. I first went to the northwest frontier of Pakistan in 1994 for 3 months. And I learned a great deal from that experience. One of the things that happened while I was there was I went to Afghan refugee camps, for there were many Afghan refugees in Pakistan at that time, and really fell in love with the Afghan refugees and the Pashtun people in general. And I really felt that God wanted me to return to this part of the world. A couple of years later, I got married, and my husband and I both shared the desire to work amongst people from an Islamic background. And so we then again looked at this part of the world. And so then in 2003, we really felt God was calling us to come to either northwest Pakistan or Afghanistan and to work with the people here, the poor and the vulnerable, because we really believe that is God's heart, is to help those who don't automatically get justice, don't automatically have enough to eat. So that's why we came, and we came in 2003 and spent 2 months in Pakistan and then moved to Kabul.
I have to say, and I'm very happy to say this publicly for our Compassion Radio listeners, you are our kind of people. There is so much going on in the Christian world that is based on hype, that is based on perhaps maybe a more selfish motive. But our listeners, and one of the benefits of Compassion Radio is we have the opportunity to work with and to be in contact with what I regard as the finest people in the world. And while your name might not be a household word at this point, I know that doesn't matter to you. And yet the work that you're doing is so important to the kingdom of Christ and so important to the people that you serve and the people that Christ loves. And there is no place in the world that my wife and I and the Compassion Radio loves more than Afghanistan and that Northwest Frontier Province area of Pakistan. So we honor Hagar International for making its institutional commitment, but I know that they could not do what they're doing without someone like you, and specifically without you. So we honor what you're doing and taking your considerable medical skills into a venue like that and serving Christ and serving the people that he loves so deeply. Bronwyn Graham, you don't have to respond to that, but I just want our listeners to understand why an interview like this is so important and why we focus at Compassion Radio on the kind of conversation that we've been featuring today. I hope that we can have further contact with you and keep track of what it is that you're doing, and as time goes on, have a part in helping to support in whatever way we can the work that you're doing there in Afghanistan. It's God's work, and we love you and salute you for what you're doing. Bronwyn, is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about, at least in this interview today, that you'd like to share with our listeners?
The main thing I'd like to convey is please pray for this place, pray for Afghanistan, pray for the people here. I think you mentioned earlier that sometimes the media portrays Afghanistan in a not very positive light.
Yeah.
But So many people here are good people. Our staff who work alongside us, our national staff, are extremely committed to what they do and to helping their fellow countrymen. And they are an inspiration also. And so please pray for peace in this place. And I guess my other thing would be, if you want to contribute to our programs, then please do so. You can do so on the Hagar USA website, which is www.hagarusa.org.
Well, Bronwyn Graham, Dr. Bronwyn Graham, we thank you so much for being with us today on Compassion Radio from your location there in Kabul, Afghanistan. And may God bless you, may He protect you, and may the work that He's given you to do flourish beyond all belief. We love what you're doing, and we stand with you in prayer and in many other ways as time goes on.
Thanks so much.